Today we're going to get into Chapter 6 and we're going to focus on finally our first chapter where we're going through one area of QuickBooks and all the items have a sequence and a focus together rather than kind of bouncing around to all these other different areas like we've been doing into the chapters up to this point. So Chapter 6, we're going to focus on the purchases and cash disbursements cycle, mainly with a business that has a product or inventory as what it's in business to do. So if you guys want to get into Jackson Supply Company, and in the first part here on page 5, we're going to look at creating a purchase order. So you remember in the practice set, we created a purchase order to order our inventory or our product we were going to sell. We'll do the same thing here on page 5. And we can find a purchase order up in the upper left hand corner here of our home page. Just click on purchase order. Then once again we can type in who we're selling it to, or who we're buying it from I should say. We'll adjust the date. We'll adjust the purchase order number. And then down on the bottom here, we'll put the items that we want to order. So we'll type in the item number, hit tab. You see it fills in our general cost for those items. When I adjust the quantity, you see, once again, it does the math for us, like we've seen in some other areas of QuickBooks. Then we'll add item 117, 10 of those at $9 a piece. We should get a total purchase order of $513. And your screen should match the picture on the top of page 6. You can save a new and we'll open up a new blank purchase order. On the top of page 7, we'll look at making a purchase order, but we're going to adjust our default prices. So what happens when they're not the same as usual? Because your costs are going to change. It's not going to be the same every time. Once again, we'll fix the date. Number's going to stay the same. Looks like we're going to change our, now how our shipping address got messed up here. But we can go in and type a new one based on the information on page 7. And once again, we can fill in our items, hit tab, change our quantity to 40, and our price, you see we got a default of $26.50, but we can tab over, we can just type in a new one based on what we expect to be charged. Maybe in this case, price went down, so it's a one-time deal. The comforters, we're going to buy 10 of them, and we're going to do it at $31 a piece. And we should have a total purchase order of $12.60, matching the picture on page 7. So this is saying, hey, we want to buy this stuff from you. We'll hit save and close, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So now on page 8, what's going to happen when we receive those items? So what about the items from Omni Incorporated? They were received along with an invoice number. So we'll come here to receive inventory and click on the little down thing, and you see we have two options: receive inventory with bill, receive inventory without bill. So if you receive an invoice number, it is going to be with bill. So make sure you select the with bill option. I'm emphasizing that because that's generally a thing students make mistakes on. So in the Enter Bills window, we'll type in Omni Incorporated and hit Tab, and it's going to ask us, hey, you got a purchase order for them. Do you want to fill that in here? And we're going to go, sure. So I'll click yes. I'll change the drop-down box, and I'll hit OK. And you see what's going to happen is all the items off of that purchase order you see filled in my bill, saving us some work. The vendor invoice number goes under reference number here for our tracking. We received everything we ordered, so the quantity, they charged us the same amount, so none of the prices changed. And everything should match the picture on the top of page 9. We'll hit Save and Close. On the bottom of page 9, going to the top of page 10, we'll receive the items from American Linen. So once again, we'll receive inventory with bill. We'll type in American Linen Supply. Once again, we hit yes when it asks us, do you want to apply the purchase order? So we'll apply the purchase order that we created. We'll fill in the invoice number. And you see now we didn't get everything that we ordered and the prices changed. So QuickBooks once again gave us the default information from our past purchase order, but we are not tied to that. We can still plug in whatever happened. So in this case we got 30 items at $21.50 a piece. We got 8 items at $28 a piece, and the total amount of our invoice is $869. And this would match the picture on the bottom of page 10. So just like we've seen in other areas, that we have our default stuff that QuickBooks gives us to save some time, but if it ends up different in reality, we can just change it. And once we're done, we'll hit Save and Close. Page 12, what if we buy inventory but we didn't go through the steps of filling out a purchase order? Maybe we called them up and just told them everything that we wanted to order, but you know, the purchase order didn't get formally recorded in the accounting records, or wasn't, you know, given to the accounting department, and now we just have some stuff and a bill that shows up. Well, we'll come here to Enter Bills on our home page. And on the bottom of 12, we're going to buy stuff from American Linen again. We're not going against the purchase order. We'll update the date, type in the new invoice number, and you see we've got 2 tabs on the bottom, the Expense tab and the Items tab. The Items tab is going to be for our product or our inventory. The Expense tab will be for our day in, day out expenses. So now under the Items tab, we just need to type in the items, how many we ordered, and the price. And we can do that for all 3 of the items here on the bottom of page 12. The total of amount of our invoice you see filled in the amount due. Our discount stayed under terms, so we need to make an adjustment there. And we'll hit Save and New. Okay, what if we buy stuff that's not inventory? Well, just like I said a second ago, we've got the inventory, the items tab, and the expenses tab. So if we buy stuff that's not inventory, we'll use the expenses tab. And on the bottom of page 14, we went to the office supply store, standard office supplies, and we bought a new printer and some paper. Well, the printer we want to record as a fixed asset, and the paper we can expense to office supplies. So we'll type in our vendor, we'll fill in the date, and our invoice number again. We'll use fixed assets. And in the memo here, we'll fill in what exactly we bought. So we got reference if we look back at this bill later, what was exactly purchased. And that should match our picture on the top of page 15. So there we bought some tangible property. What if we got our regular day in, day out bills? So on the bottom of 15 and going on to 16, we got our electric bill for our utilities for the month. Well, we would enter that in the same way using the expenses tab here. So we'll type in our vendor, type in our invoice number, and we'll debit it to our expense account of utilities. And the memo, just once again, what we paid for. So I should have mentioned earlier here, our journal entries are happening in the background from what we do in these transactions. So here, from the Enter Bills window, anything that goes under the expense account, that's our debit. So remember, from accounting 1 and 2, expenses get bigger with a debit. So it would be a debit to utilities expense. If we're entering it as a bill, we're not paying for it. So our liability of accounts payable is increasing. So it's a debit to utilities, credit to accounts payable. If I go back to our last one here, it's a debit to fixed assets and a debit to office supplies and a credit to accounts payable. So when I ask you what the journal entries that happen from these transactions, I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel, to think of something else. Exactly what you put in here under the expenses tab, that's what you're using. Those are the accounts for the debit in your journal entry. For our inventory purchases, our asset of inventory would be getting bigger. So it would be a debit to inventory and a credit to accounts payable. So just to give you a little background of what the actual accounting, the debits and credits that we did in the practice set, that's all happening within our QuickBooks here in these nice, easy little windows. Now let's look at paying some of these invoices on page 17. So to pay our bills, we would go from Enter Bills straight over here to Pay Bills. Our little bills flow chart. And we're going to pay the American Linen Supply, the original invoice was $869, I believe. So ALS 2663, so we would click in the checkbox. Now we're paying this on February 25th. Now if I come down here and change my date, you see we were offered a 2% discount if we pay within 10 days. So if we're taking advantage of the discount here, we would use the account Set Discount. So we'll click Set Discounts, and we'll use the account Purchase Discounts for our discount account. Now that'll factor in the break that we're getting from paying early. You see the amount to pay has been adjusted. So what I'm actually cutting my check here for is going to be $850.162. And this could be if you're doing it in QuickBooks and printing it out, or if you wrote the check by hand and now you're just recording in QuickBooks that you paid it. So down on the bottom we want the date, we want it to be check, assign check number, which we'll do in a second, and then that's going to come out of our general cash account. And this would follow the picture on 6/18. We're going to say pay selected bill, and we're going to type in check number 513. But we won't necessarily, let's say, pay the full amount of our bills. And that's how we're going to handle on page 20. So we'd come here to enter bills on the home page. And we're going to pay, not enter bills, but pay bills, sorry. Let's go back to pay bills. And let's find our bill from Omni Incorporated for $513. So once again, I would check next to it, but we're only going to pay $300. So I'm going to come over here to the amount to pay on the right and type in $300. We change the date to the 20th. Once again, assign check number. Click Pay Bills and type in 514. Hit OK. Look at that, we got another one paid. The QuickBooks sound of completing a transaction. So now when I'm paying my bills here, before when I took on the bills, I was crediting accounts payable. Accounts payable got bigger. Well, now if I'm paying that off, I don't owe as much money. I'd be recording that with a debit to that account. So either of these checks that I just wrote would be a debit to accounts payable and a credit to cash. Cash is getting smaller by writing a check, by paying it. So either of these last two bills that I pay would be a debit to accounts payable for the amounts and a credit to cash for the amounts. And once again, that's what's happening accounting-wise in the background around all this stuff. Okay, page 23, what if we want to buy some inventory without a purchase order, and we're going to pay for it when we buy it? So remember we had a practice set transaction where the company mailed a check to us. So it'd be the same kind of deal. We're going to pay for our items. So we're going to buy from American Linen Supply, and if I just want to cut a check to pay a bill, so I got the bill and I'm going to pay it right away, we would just go to Write Checks. So I'll go to Write Checks, and now on the top of page 24, I'll type in American Linen Supply. I don't want to access any of my previous things. I'll click Items down in the tab, just like we had in the Enter Bills window. And I'll type in the items that we want to buy, the quantity, typed in the wrong number. Oh, I am getting blind today. 106, there we go. 30 king sheet sets, at $28.50 and 30 king comforters at $40.25 a piece. They should all come together to be just under $2,100, matching the picture on the bottom of 24. So right now we did a debit to inventory and a credit to cash because we paid it. What if I paid my regular bills right away and I didn't bother taking on the enter bills window and recording that payable? So there's no sense in putting in an enter bills if we're just going to pay it right away. We can take that two-step process and turn it into one from this write checks window and save ourselves some time. You would just want to use enter bills if it's a bill you want to keep track of and you're going to pay later in a week or 2 or 3 or 4, depending upon the time period. So on 26 and 27, we had Hawkins Web Design make us a website. So we're going to record that. So we'll type in Hawkins Web Design. You see we don't have them as a vendor, so we'll just use the quick add function and we'll add them as a vendor. Then hit OK. We're going to pay them $875. And we're going to debit it to the account professional fees for our expense account. So down in the memo, we'll put the invoice number so they know what we're paying. Then we'll use account 41,700. Oh, we got to get out of the items. We got to go into the expense line since this is going to be a regular expense. And there I can use my professional fees expense account. And I would type in once again in the memo here in the middle what it is. In this case, website design. So this would be a debit to professional fees and a credit to cash. Once we're done, we'll hit save and close. So the last thing in this inventory chapter here would be, what if we want to return something? So just like if you're gonna, you guys, have probably bought something that you didn't like and you had to take it back. Well, it'd be the same thing for a business. What if we bought some inventory and it didn't meet our standards, or if it arrived broken or something like that? Well, we would have to send it back. So in order to return an item, here's where it gets a little tricky. You're going to click the Enter Bills window. So we'll click Enter Bills, and you see I got two options in the upper left corner, bill and credit. So if this is a return, we're going to select credit. And on the bottom of 629, we're going to enter in the details that we're returning. So American Linen Supply. Our debit memo number under the reference number line. In the memo, we'll put in the original invoice that we were billed on. And down here, we'll put in the items that were returned. So we returned 10 washcloths and 5 draperies. So now by returning it, this is going to decrease inventory. We're getting rid of it. So inventory would be credited, and our debit here is going to accounts payable. We're sending it back, and it's a bill we haven't paid yet. It would be applied against that bill, and we would owe them less money. If it's something we had previously paid for, then we're going to end up getting a refund. And we'd get some cash along the way, and hopefully a check's going to come in the mail. And maybe we'd use a purchase, return, and allowances account. Something like that for our debit. So that is all the inventory activities for Chapter 6, and now you guys can put together 5 and 6 and complete your homework assignment, which will just be slightly longer than usual. by bringing these two things together. So if you have any questions on any of the transactions or any of the things in the assignment, please don't hesitate to let me know.